Hello and welcome to another weekly live stream. Welcome to Blacktober. Yeah, I've been off for like 2 weeks because I have been ill and busy and stuff. So today's the first one after a while. Yeah, you can see I've still got some sniffles. Um, yeah, lower middle of the screen there is where you can download the last test build. We're going to be doing another release here in a couple weeks. But let's get started before thank the patrons. You guys keep the lights on here. It's been a rough year, and so thanks a lot, guys. At some point, I'm going to put like some animated credits that we can just skip that and just have them play while the video starts. Without too much further ado, let's get started. I look a little rough there. All right. YouTube says our streaming quality is excellent, but that we have nobody on. I hope those two things aren't related. I'm going to start the session by showing sort of some things I've been working on separate from the inventory, because I have done a lot in the last 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah, my nose is running, so this will be fun. Nice full moon in the sky. Let's make it a little brighter outside. So one of the things I've been trying to add is a detail mode, which means like if you were here and you needed to do something with equipment or whatever, like on top of here, you could enter a detail mode right by hitting F. And I'm trying to fix some collision issues. Like if you can see, there's a little blue thing that it's supposed to be where the mouse is. Hey Ron, how's it going? But it's a little off, and I spent like a weekend trying to figure out why, and I think I'm just going to work around it, because really you won't be dragging the mouse so much as a piece of equipment or whatever. But it's kind of cool because if you're here, you can see it like blurs the background, so you can focus on just this little area here. And so the idea would be potentially if you had to do crafting or something on top of there, or something specific with these the plants or the flowers, or you needed to look in detail at something that you could zoom in, and perhaps the engine could then even provide more details there. Like this weekend I imagine, or this week I imagined if you were trying to track some animal, perhaps where they've been through has trampled the grass, but then sometimes you might see like something that you need to look at closer, and you could zoom in to see like the footprints or in which direction they're going and stuff like that. It's kind of like the Dungeons and Dragons equivalent of doing a search, right? And then you might notice secret doors and stuff that you wouldn't know normally before. And really, I mean, if you walked up to them, you should be able to see them too. But really, the whole thing is developed so that if you had this up, if you had this detailed view up and you had your inventory open, then you could do specific stuff with items here, stack them in a particular way, stack the firewood just the way you want it, or put the spit just the way you want it, that kind of thing. So I think it'll be a basis for certain types of crafting. The other thing is towns now have a bunch of different types of warehouses in them, and this town's a little weird because it grew over a cave. And not in the way that's supposed to work. So this is the town I'm going to use to debug the cave problem, because towns are not supposed to form over caves like this. It's supposed to prevent them from forming. Anyway, so yeah, we've got some big warehouses, and I was able to fix the vertical to get it like I wanted. And so these warehouses turned out kind of cool. So they'll randomly show up, different sizes. I don't know if we have a 4x4. We do. It's even got like the top doors. And so when it has, so that's the nice thing, is because I was able to get the elevated roof to work right. I did a bunch of debugging of block types. Maybe I'll show that off in a minute. And so we've even got the little hoist beams for hoisting things up into the upper parts. And so eventually there'll be, when there's placeable objects, there'll be some kind of ladders in here in these open bays, so that people could get up into the top and manage their warehouse inventory. But I think that's all that's going on. Here's another little warehouse. I think that's all that's going on in the game itself. The little scripts I wrote to test the block merges and stuff were kind of fun. Let's look at those real quick before we get started in the actual work tonight. Let's get started in that. Wow. Okay. So Gradle run blockhead. So to get to tweak the algorithm for how things get merged together when when the buildings generate, they go through a separate kind of it inserts blocks into the world, but if there's a block already there, it needs to know what to do about it. And so I wrote this script that lets me test that out. It's the test combiner. And so what it'll do is it'll put a bunch of block types down this way and the same block types down this way, and it'll show me how they merge together. And so here you can see this wall and this wall, they merge together to a wall. That's fine. This wall and this horizontal wall merged into a solid block. So if we ever tried to insert one of these walls where one of these is, it'll put a solid wood block there. And the tricky ones were like the cylinders and the cones, and so there's special case code for there, so that if you put like a downward facing cone together with an upward facing cone, you get a cylinder, that kind of thing. So you guys can kind of see how the things line up. And it happens for the skinny cones as well, the little spikes. So a spike down combined with a spike up will make a thin cylinder. And anyway, so it lets me test that, and I actually have a mode where it'll just randomly put things down the side and mix them together and show me how they mix. And I can use that to then find new combinations to test for. But it was kind of a fun little thing to play with and get the things all worked out. Yeah, so here's like one where a wood post, if it's combined with a wood cylinder, will still make a wood post because it's kind of a similar shape, but the wood post might actually be lining up against something, so it's preferred. And then there's some specific things that are built in for different shape types, but then there's some automatic stuff using the signature stuff we used for the choppable blocks, which also let me fix a bunch of bugs in the choppable block stuff because I found some bugs in the signature code. So that was good too. But what we'll be working on tonight is the inventory management, and I'll let you see where I left off, which is, I think we worked on it 2 live streams ago. Anyway, yeah, it's been a long few weeks. I spent 1 week working like 10-hour days at my day job. That's kind of what happened. I got sick, and then I was feeling better, and then worked that weekend at the day job to get something done, and then 10-hour days, and then I didn't feel so well again. I even took a COVID test because I was like, this is taking too long, but I tested negative for COVID, fortunately. So we've got what we had before. I don't know if we had stacks working before, but stacks work now. So if you have, you can barely see that. It says 2 out of 9, 1 out of 9 there. If I put this one on there, it'll say 3 out of 9. It had been working so that if I did the same thing into the containers, but you can see a bunch of exceptions. When I've been moving around to doing the multiple sections, that all stuff broke. So now a container that is too large to fit on the screen can be divided into layers or sections depending on what kind of container it is. In the case of a chest, I have it divided into layers, but I've set it up so that basically it divides the width and the height by 3 in this case, which means there's 9 separate zones, which I've implemented as layers here. But that makes the chest small enough to fit on the screen, because if we came over here and I took that out and I said like no chest splits at all, that chest, oh yeah, we're gonna get all kinds of problems. So that chest, this is the real scale of a chest to the backpack. Like if you had a backpack sitting right next to a scale, this is about the difference. And this, for inventory management, even if I zoomed way out, basically these little apples would be too small to work with and stuff. And so instead of making the chest this big, we can divide it up. So if I split it by 2, that'll leave 4 layers, and it's still too big, although it's getting close, right? But it's still kind of too big. And then, so I picked 3 as a nice sort of thing where there's not too many layers, but there are layers. And then I got nerdy and I made it so that stuff in the different layers actually shows up underneath. So like layer 9 is the bottom layer, and there's a sword on the bottom layer, and so you can see that's that sword there. And then as we flip through the layers, it basically moves that layer forward so we can look at it. And in the top layer is the axe, and so there's a bunch of different layers. I just thought it was kind of a cool graphic effect. And so if you had like a ton of stuff in this chest, you would see that it's just full of junk back there behind this whatever layer you have selected. Some things that still need to be implemented that we're not going to do for this release are, I want to make it so that if you drag the axe and drag it over one of these buttons, it will switch to that layer so that you could move an axe to another layer. You can move an item to another layer. That doesn't work yet. I also want it set up so that when a chest opens or a container opens, it would automatically highlight the first layer that actually has something in it. Let's say we had our axe over here. The player would have to if they open this chest, they'd have to click through to find which layer had the first item, and so I'll make it so that it automatically selects the layer with the first item and so on. But this means these big 1 meter wide chests are going to hold a lot of stuff. So that's going to be kind of cool. So you have one chest like this in your house or whatever, you could fill it with all kinds of crap. And then when these are also, what I call spirit chests, which means that there's one chest that exists, and you have different local chests you can open to access its contents, so that we share between towns and stuff. You'd have a lot of space to put that kind of shared junk in there. And someday I'd like to let the user change the names of these layers for the chests that they own, so that they could potentially give them weapons, armor kind of things, the stuff that they keep in there. Now I actually don't so I feel like if Mythruna players are if the general Mythruna player has a bunch of these chests and they're all chock full of crap, then I've failed as a game designer, because it really should only be the very worst pack rats that end up in that situation. I hope to have the game be such a way that you feel like it's safe to just carry the items you need, sell the rest, and that you won't feel like having a chest full of 900 swords because you're paranoid about something happening to your favorite sword or whatever. Your swords and your weapons that you carry should be part of your character. Once you've customized your battle axe or your sword or whatever with whatever magic properties or adornments you put on it, it should be your sword and part of your character, and you wouldn't give away your arm, and so it would be just part of you, and so you wouldn't really keep 90 of them laying around. You'd have one you developed, and so mostly this would be for crafting materials and things that you collect and haven't used yet, kind of thing. Anyway, so I need to what I've started doing is actually hooking this up to the entity system so I can get it into the game, because right now this is essentially completely separate from that, and so I think that we could work on tonight, mostly because after 2 weeks off I didn't want to make you guys have to sit through lots of stopping and starting the game over and over again, and this loads really quickly as we make modifications and test them, and in some cases I can just live update the scripts, which is what I've been doing. I really want to get the birds finished though, because the 2 things that we have to do for this release are finish the inventory management system and get the birds properly sized and spawned and 3D AI and so on and so forth. I think I'm also going to make a crow skin since we're coming up on October. And if any of you think of other ideas for this release that would be Halloween themed, I may have some surprises now that we're getting into Blacktober. I may have some surprises coming up and so on, but if you guys can think of anything that might be relatively small to get in for Halloween, something I could put in the next 2 weeks and get into this release. That would be cool. I keep trying to think maybe a haunted house or something to that effect. And maybe I'll just build one of those in the server world. But I'd like to do another Halloween party, but maybe the day after Halloween, November 1st, since Halloween's on a Thursday. So maybe the normal Friday live stream on November 1st, assuming no illnesses, etc., could be a Halloween party where we all log into the server with some costumes or something. Anyway, so without further ado, let me take a breath and get started here. So what I've been doing is going through all of these places I've been sort of manually messing with the items. I think we talked about this previously. Yeah, so like on the one layer are the what have we got? Item, oops. Item, I should have done this in container item, which can have, you know, a bunch of items in it. And these are like in an MVC sense, these are the model, and then there's like an item view and a container item view, which are the UI things. And then tonight what we'll be doing is relating these to the entity system, so that entity IDs with certain types will create items or container items, and that will, you know, sort of plug into this model view controller thing. But when I wrote this little demo test code that's running this stuff over here, I was essentially manipulating those item and item containers directly. You can see, like here, I create an item container, and I mess with them directly. So I've been going through and retrofitting in the right components to do the entity component system. So here I've created the sword entity. Create item adds the right, you know, entity components to that. And so the idea being I would get rid of this and I would just have this, which would set the entity component to be set up to be contained in that particular container. I'm going to leave them both in place for now. But yeah, I'm basically going through and retrofitting these, which I can do. Yeah, things rapidly fall off a cliff, but yeah, that's why I thought crows, because crows is literally just a straight reskin, whereas a bat would require some modeling. But I thought if whenever you come up to a graveyard or whatever, there's just a bunch of crows hanging out that scatter when you come up, I think that would be kind of cool. But yeah, bats are another good idea. Okay, so this is pickaxe ID. I'm probably only going to do a couple of these, and then a couple of examples. Yeah, so see, there's a bunch of other support things I had to do. The contained in component, I wanted to add, it used to just be what the root container is, what the actual container is. So in this case, it's the player is the root container, test container is in this case is the backpack, and then the location within there. So 5, 0, and that was it. But then to manage the different things between having containers and containers, and now sections inside of containers and stackable items and things, I had to have like all of these different entity queries to pull back the different stuff, and I might have stuff for one and not stuff for the other. So I might know this is an item, but I don't know it's a container yet, and so the code to manage that was really tricky. And so I added this type to contained in so that I can have items and containers and sections and whatever else, and then a max stack size so that the backend, when it's setting these up, can already know when it puts this in the container, it can have stacks. Because maybe there are some containers where even like if you could stack gems normally in any container, but there are special crafting containers where you can't stack the gems because the whole point is to lay them out in a pattern or whatever for the magic system. And so it's sort of up to the container whether it pays attention to that or not. So I had to add 2 fields to contained in, which my entity component system library did not support. if you add them, it would break the database. So I fixed the entity component system to the open source entity component system to allow adding fields after there's already a database, and it will automatically add the fields to the database and then default those to zeros and so on and so forth. So more work has happened than looks like just from what we see here. Okay, so let me do just a couple more of these. And then what I really want is to do some of the stackable items. Yeah, so the ones with max count. So this one we will say Apple ID, player ID, container ID, and then this is 9 plus I, comma 6. These are items, but they have a max stack size of 4. Okay, and so I can, like, anytime I can't control S, it'll reset and make sure that all that stuff still works. Everything still where it's supposed to be. I kind of like the swords cascading down. It felt weird when there were multiple layers and there wasn't a background to know that there was a ton of stuff in here but not be able to see it. And so I felt it was really important to be able to see the layers that you weren't currently selecting. Just felt wrong to not be able to do that. So the axe is still there too, you can kind of see it. All the layers are rendered, and then whatever layer is currently selected is pulled to the top, which I think is way easier than a real chest, where if you had something on the bottom, you'd have to dig the whole thing out to get it. All right, so let's also do the shafts. Damn right. What's the piece of wood that's been sitting in the chest? Shaft. Damn right. Alright. Except for those are 0. Alright. And so then now we get into, and yeah, let me go ahead and do the swords too. Let me steal this one because it's already mostly set up. Did I do the bag? I did do the bag. Yep. I did not do the chest. Okay, so I'll have to do the chest. So this one will go into 25 minus I times 3, 0. And they are not stackable because they are swords. And it is not test containers target section. That should still work. Yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. And then the chest I need to okay, so for the chest, wherever we've done this, chest ID, there's going to be a ton of weird stuff to hook up here, and it's going to be its own route. Oh, the chest is not contained in anything. Oh, it's its own root, it's its own container. It's a root container, so, and that means we can just use 0, 0 because the UI is going to place it where it wants. It is a type container, and max stack size 0. But then we need to do the same thing for each of the sections, and these really will. Oh, we already got a section ID. Cool. So just ID is the root. We're setting it on the section. I'm sorry if this is a little like esoteric. They are type sections. When I was working out the, we want to give them names too. So I think this is what we need, and then see if that works. Yep. Okay, so before I was talking about something. No matter. But we're going to want to give the sections all needed names for sure. Which actually may end up being a weird problem. Anyway, when I started working out the code for how to keep track of all of the different item containers, items, and sections, just from entities, it was going to be quite complicated. So adding this type should allow me to simplify a bunch of things. Then I keep all the objects in a tree, which we'll develop in a second. So everything's still working. I've got it all like that. I think what I'm going to do is boolean UI direct equals false, and then I'm going to, everywhere we are adding these directly to the UI, I'm going to turn off. So we've got, yes, so I don't know if that view is used anywhere, but if, let's see if that breaks something. Nope, it just didn't throw exceptions, but it didn't render it because we're not adding it anymore. That's exactly what I wanted. Okay. For the moment, I'm going to leave that on because it's all these other ones that I want to check. So I like to use the I like to use a flag like this so I can turn it back on if I decide I've gone down some wrong road. Oh yeah, in fact, it's got to be like that. Wow, yeah. Everything that was in there now needs to be in here. So yeah, the little bag went away. These all need to also be in that flag. So it wasn't just this. It was all of this. And this too. Essentially, we want to only set things up with the entities and the components. Which means we may have to add new components later, but this should be the minimum to get set up. I'm leaving test container in for the moment just to make sure I get rid of all these other ones. So create the entity and then set the thing. The other thing is we're going to have to do something about these inventory sizes. At any rate, It'll be a bit before we get to see these again, which is why I like to have the, in case I have to check something, the flag to turn it all back on. Because, yeah. So regardless, we're going to need to do this. And then only if we're UI direct. Because to get the actual inventory to work like this again, it's got to know what the interior size is, got to know what the exterior size is. And to do that on the Java side, I have to port some of this code over and so on. And really, I'm trying to just make sure the entity hierarchies work first, and then we'll worry about making them the correct size and dealing with the no top situation. I am not even sure how I'm going to deal with the fact that for containers there are really two models. So I've got to think about how to deal with the alternate model for when they're displayed open like this. And it could be that I just use assemblies that have those animations to open and close them. All right, so I get distracted. Okay, so we've done that. I shouldn't have to do that anyway. Let me turn this back on for a second. Yeah, no such property chest sections. Hello, Lando, how are you? Long time no see. Lando Calrissian. Okay, so what line is it complaining about? 371. Yeah, that one. So that's right. We cannot do that. We have to have this and this out here. Okay, so that should set everybody up correctly again. Nope, now we're missing something else. No such property chest for container UI. That is also true. But that's not going to matter when I turn the... It is going to matter. Oh, that's not fair. Yeah, I had 2 years in a row now. I had similar situations where I busted my butt for some project, and then for whatever reason, it turned out not to matter when it came time for raises and bonuses. And like at this point in my career, I recognize I'm not going to get big raises. I'm kind of topped out in my field unless I want to change levels. But I used to like to get, my old boss used to get me a yearly bonus, and they wouldn't let it happen these past couple of years. So it was a little disappointing when that's something I was used to. So let's just def chest here and take that out. Okay, so that should let things work again. Nope. Get grid size, section view. I'm wasting a lot of time getting this old code to continue working after these changes, but it's usually worth it. Add contain. Oops, that's not right. 382. It's inside the container view. Because this .section view is null because I took this out, isn't it? Yep. That's unfortunate. If UI direct, then do this. In fact, this whole thing. Oops. boink, 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 boink. The thing is, I really like my job, and I hate it when it gets down to the money part, and then turns into something that, you know, without money being involved, it would have been fine, kind of thing. Okay, so we got rid of the chest, and if I put this back in, we'll have gotten rid of the... And then we'll get a bunch of errors now because there's a bunch of null objects, and that's fine because that'll help me track down the rest of them. Is it 348? Oh, yeah. UI direct. So anyway, we're trying to get to the point where, yep, all this stuff is recognized as true. So what I want to do is this. Oh, this is going to be a bit of a problem too. I've been putting all these create items inside the block, but the create item is what adds the... So what I'll do... Maybe do create item entity and take all this crap out. And this is just all right. So everywhere I'm doing create entity now. Okay, so I did still do create item there. Maybe we're okay if I just keep doing that. It's just throwaway garbage. It's like we're not going to use any of that stuff. But I can see here I've created the entity, created the item, set the component, and I could probably I just need to keep doing that in all the cases. So these that I've been putting together, I need to move like this. I think that still works. And then so as I go through 412, yeah. So as I go through, I'll find more of these cases. Yes, of course. So what we need to do and then everywhere we have one of these, we can replace it with backpack ID. Backpack, 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 backpack. I'm the bag that's loaded up with things and knickknacks too. And this is... Yeah, we're gonna have a problem with the sections too. But anyway, what's it complaining about now? 416. Yeah, but that's expected actually. Okay, so let's do this. If UI direct. Actually, let's cheat. Use ugly code. Oh. Yeah, that's fine. But the thing is, like everywhere else, we're going to have multi-block, so. Alrighty. Oh, yeah, we're good. Now, I'm going to reorder all of these at once so that I can cut and paste a lot more. That's already in the right order, and we're not setting. Okay, so we'll just take these out completely for a second. And here, oops. Blankety blank blank. Man, we're wasting a lot of time just getting this set up to do further development. I apologize. Okay, so we're up to 478. So each of these is a similar problem, but at least we don't have to repeat it a bunch of times. Just if UI direct. And if UI direct. I sometimes wish some common multi-level clipboard had become popularized enough that the hotkeys were well defined across applications, so that you could have a stack of cut and paste stuff. I believe mentally I could keep track of 3 or 4 items in the clipboard. But I've never had to do it, so I could be totally wrong. We want chest section entities equals blank. I keep track of the entities we're creating for the sections. I don't know. It may. I'm not running Windows 10, so I don't know. And again, I wish it happened a long time ago so that it was already part of my muscle memory and that worked in every application kind of thing. Like this editor has its own clipboard that is somewhat compatible with the system. Every application technically interprets the clipboard in their own way. Like if you cut and paste something in Excel, it's going to act differently than if I cut something from Excel and paste it into some editor. They all have a chance to interpret it, because in the clipboard there's like a MIME type sort of situation set up, and you can transform it into different. Anyway, clipboards are surprisingly complicated. So for whatever reason, we're still failing. I think UI Direct is still set to. Oh, I have it turned off. Yeah, of course. So we're still getting the exception in all the same place I expected. 497. Yep, because this needs to now be chest section entities. So let's do def target section ID chest section entities 8 minus I blink, and then put all this stuff down here. If UI direct. We'll get to hopefully something more interesting in a second. In a real hot second, I think. Okay, we're getting closer. 512. Yeah. So if UI direct, and we just won't add that yet. Okay, so nothing works now, but we don't get any exceptions, which means all the code is doing something and thinks it's doing it correctly. And if we set this back to true, not true, but true, then we get the UI back. So I can still test things if I want to, come back to the UI and still mess with things. Anyway, let us proceed. Now I have to actually kill the application and play with code. So I worked this out in my notes. Yeah, see, I've got lots of stuff done. So this is what we just did. And we did this. And we did this. And we're not doing this, though that might be a stopgap initially. But this we're going to work on at least getting the entity containers set up, and the stuff I designed to have like a, we want a tree of items. So where's my drawing stick? There we go. So you might have you know, the chest, and then it's got all of its sections underneath it, and then, you know, however many items that has underneath it, you know, each of those sections, and maybe one of these is, you know, a stackable thing, so it's an item that also has items sitting underneath it, so that kind of thing. And so I need to build out these tree classes next. So something like this, although when I wrote this I was still thinking of having different entity containers having to watch all this stuff. I think I only need two now, one to watch for containers and one to watch for items, but we'll see how it goes. The first thing I want to do is set up the basic one that finds the different tree nodes, and anyway, so first we need to go to the container manager state, and I think we might have already been getting management state through a client log. Yeah, so we're already getting, oh, it's just showing up in the, nah, we're not getting. Okay. I don't think we need an, we probably do still need an item manager. Let's first, let's ignore this. We're going to start over. Whoops. Going to start over because what we want to watch at the base level is for all, no, that's still true for a particular route. Yeah, not for a container, but for a route now. So for a particular route ID, so for a particular route ID, I think it's just route. We want to watch for everything that's contained in that route. They will not all have shape infos. They will just be, so we'll keep track of the hierarchy there. And route ID. And for now, we actually will go ahead and start writing the tree node class just to have something. You'll see how this will work out in a second. So a lot of this works out to be about the same all the time. You tree node object equals new tree node return object. Actually, we want to probably update object it's just easier. And then yeah, so this is a container of tree nodes, and then we'll steal these from, oops, we'll just steal the whole methods. So instead of items, these are update node, or add node, update node, remove node, and this is tree node, and we're not doing anything with there. Let's go ahead and add update and release methods, because it's just a common pattern I have. And we should then see, if we run, we should see all of those things come up. Oop. Well, if we run and, oh yeah. Okay, hold on. Tree node. Alright. Yeah, okay, so that's basically all that was mistyped. I think it's fun to collect the type of errors that can generate the most compile errors. So if that one typo generated 3 compile errors, which I think is pretty impressive. We confused the code in 3 different ways. Okay, so we should get a bunch of, oh, we've never told the we had a big null pointer exception or something up here. Oh no. Backpack ID. Okay. That's something else, but I'm gonna fix it while we're here. I have the script engine set up to tell me when I've done something like this without having a def first. That's not right. What it was telling me is that I set the binding backpack backpack. And I did that on line 302. Yeah, so I just misspelled backpack, which meant I was leaking into the global namespace this new thing. But what we need to do is tell the container management state about these containers. So when I add the root containers, so when I created the player, I needed to add that as a root. Yeah, so these never were created. Interesting. Add container root. Any ID root. And so then let me go ahead and do that over here. Add container root. This may not be the right way to do this, but player ID. So the player will be a root, and then the chest will be a root. Backpack. There's the chest entity. All right. So that's all good. It's going to fail because there's no method. I was adding it, but that's okay. So we'll make that method do something. And major equals container index get root. Yeah, I may need to rename these because it's not just managing a container anymore, it's managing a root. So if manager not equal to null, we've done everything we're going to do. Otherwise, manager equals new container manager. What is the constructor? Entity data and container ID ed root. Oh, I'm going to get in trouble. And we put it in the container index, or the root index, really what it is now. Manager, and if we're enabled, we start it. And then on enable, we go through anything we already have. Container index, values, manager start, and on disable, we manager stop. I think that should get us connected. We should start seeing those entities show up in the manager, but let's see, something might blow up. Oh, nothing blew up. We see container managing state, adding and updating, adding and updating. Yep, all those container roots. Good stuff. I am going to... Yeah, okay. Alright, so now we need to start working on the tree. And so we need to keep track of the nodes. Oop. I love it when you get typing in your one column off. So you start typing and it's just the wrong it's the right word but typed one key over. Tree nodes, new hash map. While I'm here, maybe I'll change container manager to root manager. Boink, 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 boink. Oops. That's alright. This was not being used. I'm going to get rid of it. Wait, let me at least copy the get array in case I need that. Doink. All this code's committed, so it doesn't really matter. And that was never functional, so I don't think I'm going to need this either, but I think this tree node is going to take over for that. So tree node nodes, and probably, well, the container index is keeping track of our roots. And we want to probably make a method to get a tree node for an entity ID. And then make that optionally create the thing. And actually then, yeah, so this should just be the entity ID here. It's not going to be tied to a particular... So, in the database, you have... In the entity component system database, you have an entity which is just an ID. Oops, I can't write. Okay, so it's just an ID. Yeah, let's just say ID. right? And you have a bunch of these hanging out. Doing their thing. They've got components attached to them. Any number of components attached to them. When you use them and you query, say, give me all of the entity IDs that have a model and a position, for example, it's going to give you a subset of these, but it will give you an actual entity object that has the components you asked for in them. So while this may have, a bunch of different, in the database, it may have, 20 different components associated with it, from object types to models to position to AI or whatever. When you ask for, give me all of the entities with a spawn position and a model, it's going to give you an entity object that only has those two things in it that you asked for. And so that's what these entity objects are. But the tree node needs to exist outside of that. We're basically this root manager is just managing the hierarchy, and there will be another container that's looking for the models and the other things. And so this is just keeping track of the roots and all their children and those children and so on. So it doesn't need a specific entity because two different containers are going to be annotating this particular tree. All right, tree node result equals, what did I call them? Well, first of all, let's change this to root index. I find it important to name things correctly, because months from now when I come back, I'll be really confused otherwise. So nodes.get. And actually, the new Java has a way to do this all in one command, but I like to have the ability to optionally create and create then result equals new tree node ID nodes put ID results, and regardless return results. Okay, and that'll get us started, but that's not all we need to do. We need to come in here, get tree node, in this case get entity ID, and we absolutely want to create it if it doesn't exist. And then it's keeping track of it so we don't have to. That's good. But so let me just make sure that still runs. Nice thing about the app running really quickly is we can test these right away. Yeah, so that's right. Boink, boink, boink. Yeah, so that's not going to work. It's just going to be ID. Naming consistency is also important when you write software, because it will prevent you from having issues like this, where everywhere else I have something return an entity ID, it's a get entity ID method. But in the case of entity, you can get its ID just by calling get ID, and that confuses me. And while it makes a whole lot of sense for entities, for an entity's entity ID to just be get ID, because it is the ID of that entity, it would have saved me a lot of headache to have always called it get entity ID. Am I going to go fix it? No. Am I going to repeat this lecture 9 streams from now because I forgot I said it already? Yeah, probably. You guys can cut and paste that clip and play it back for me later. Alright, so we should have gotten a bunch of, yep, oh, good. Everything's being managed like it's supposed to be. Awesome, 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 awesome. Okay, so then the next thing is when we create a container root, we should always know what its root node is. So regardless of whatever other entities are going around, there will always be a tree node or create node. Did I call it create tree node or get tree node? Yeah. Just cut and paste this for this root ID. And that allows us to make sure that there's always something to add it to. And should we... Uh-oh, the Pepsi's gone. What I hope to have done tonight at least is to have us be able to dump and see the whole object hierarchy. So I hope to have at least the hierarchy built, because then annotating it with UI stuff I can do. Anyway, so let's get that working. I'm trying to think. Oh, I'm so used to putting a piece of gum in after I drink a Pepsi, I didn't even think about it. I'm going to spit it out in a second. I apologize. As I get older, I get used to flavor chains, where if I eat some meal or some snack, I always have to have another thing after it, because those are the two flavors that go together. And sometimes I have chains that are like 3 deep. Like when I eat a bowl of pineapple, I have to have some dark chocolate after. After I eat dark chocolate, I have to have a couple saltines. It's just the flavor chain. And so for me right now, Pepsi, when I finish a Pepsi, I always chew a piece of gum. And so it's the flavor chain. But I'm going to get this to the point where I'll spit it out in a second. Apologize. It might be more annoying for me than you, because A, I'm used to talking with a piece of gum in my mouth, but B, every time I chew, the headphones go kabonk, kabonk, kabonk against my head. Trying to think. Getting eccentric. No, I think it's just a little bit of OCD. Even from the time I was like 4 years old, for example, I ate my Cheerios in a very specific way. Like I had a whole system. You put the Cheerios in the bowl, and then you pour the milk on, but you make sure that the milk doesn't cover the whole thing of Cheerios. Or maybe you do. That's right. When you pour the milk in the Cheerios, you make sure it just lightly covers the Cheerios, and then you pour the most of the milk inside. I know some people put the milk in first, but I wanted the very top of the Cheerios to have a little bit of moisture, so that when I sprinkled the sugar on, it would stick. And then you'd take half of the Cheerios and you'd push them down into the milk, because then it makes sugary milk, and you eat that part. But then by the time you get done with that half of the bowl, you've still got crispy Cheerios sitting on the top, and you can eat those, and they're covered with like that milky sugar. Anyway. So yeah, and it was so funny when my youngest child was really young, like 3 or 4 years old, and I'd watch them eating a chocolate sundae or something, and it was a very specific process of, sticking their fingers in it a certain way, and it always went the same way. And I'm like, I know, I know that kid. I was that kid. But I just get used to having certain flavors together. It's always been true. Certain meals have to have certain desserts and so on. You can call it eccentricity if you want to, but all right, I'm going to spit this out. Excuse me. And into the trash. There we go. Now water. Somehow went down the wrong hole. Okay, so what I was trying to decide is if I want the entity that comes in here. Well, I have to. So I was trying to think if I wanted to be a child of the root, even if it was the root. But I don't think I can do that, because if the child is the root, excuse me, if the child is the root, it will be the same tree node, and we shouldn't add the tree node to itself because that's a recipe for disaster. So, and regardless, I got to get the in container here. In container e.get in container. So that's how we get that. You know, we got this entity. It's got loaded up with this container contained in. Oh, that's right. Contained in. Oops. And contained in. Actually, let's call it in. All right, so it's in. If in dot get container. Is it just container or container ID? It is just get container. So does anybody else have flavor chains like that, or am I the only one? So if objects equals, part of it's that I used to drink Pepsis like one after the other, and at some point I decided one way to cut down on that. Well, I've told the story before, right? I used to drink Pepsis all the time, and then I made it so that I was only allowed to drink the Pepsi while I was coding, which meant I had motivation to start coding because then I would get to have a Pepsi. And so otherwise I wasn't allowed, and I'd drink water or whatever. But then it got to the point where I couldn't code without a Pepsi because I got so used to the the brain reward system there that that I hold on, I'm like thinking and typing at the same time. Anyway, so I got so used to doing that, but then to break that habit, I started eating a piece of gum between the Pepsi, and so you know, to improve my health, I drink a Pepsi, and then immediately after I have a piece of gum. And now that's become such a habit that obviously I do it without thinking about it. So I keep gum over here next to my mouse, and then I'll chew that gum until I think about it or it gets too old or whatever, and then I get up and I walk around, which usually makes my Fitbit happy, and I go remind my family what I look like, etc. Then I come up, have a couple baby carrots to start the process over again. And so, but the flavor chains, they just stick in my head now. All right, so so it's hard. Oh man, when I was diagnosed, my youngest child, when very very young, ended up getting like head lice from school, and so we took, and my mother-in-law was in town and so on and so forth. So we ended up taking everybody to the doctor because we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We were young parents, well, youngish parents, new parents. And so it's funny because the doctors like treated us like we had the plague or something. They're like, they didn't want to touch us. And so they checked us out, and yes, indeed, we did have it. And they wouldn't do anything about it, basically, but they had confirmed some of us had it and some of us didn't. And I was there. I was like the only one in the house that didn't get it. But I was standing there, you know, drinking a Pepsi while I was filling out the paperwork and stuff. But because I was there to be seen, they took my blood pressure, and they didn't want to release me because my blood pressure was so high. And so that weekend, like I was like, okay, I gotta like start eating right, cut the caffeine out. And I was not a nice person to be around that first weekend. And so I was like, no, I've got to just moderate. And then it's been a back and forth struggle since then. So I won't quit cola completely because it's the last vice I have. I like eat really well. Partially vegetarian now. In fact, I like cut a bunch of meat meals out of my diet over the years. Like I used to eat turkey sandwiches for lunch when I was trying to be healthy. And now I eat tomato sandwiches if I eat a lunch at all, that kind of thing. And every other dinner is usually a fake meat meal and stuff like that, just to cut down on some of the cholesterol. At any rate, yeah, it was good times. Okay, so tree node parent equals get tree node in dot get container. Okay, so yeah, so logic here. Logic here is that if the root is already the container. Oh no, we don't want to return the root node. So no, what we want is say tree node parent, and then if the container is, because this is the container that this entity is in, it's so yeah. So if the parent is the root node, oops, no, if the parent is within the parent, yes, root node, and otherwise the parent is the container. And then there's the other case where if the entity ID itself is the parent, so yeah, if we're adding the container, if the entity itself is the container, then we won't add it to itself. No, containers can be in containers. What am I thinking? So a backpack can hold like a pouch, and so the pouch would have the parent, the container as the backpack. The backpack would have the container as the player. If it had one at all, it might actually be its own thing. Which would be fine. And so what would that look like? Right. Oh man, this gets confusing. So I may have to write this down. So pouch in backpack on player. So pouch in container equals backpack ID. Root equals player ID. Backpack container equals player. Yeah, root equals player. Yeah, when I took a sip of water before, some of it went down the wrong hole. Okay, so the container will never be the entity. The entity will never be its own container, so we're good here. We shouldn't need that. And so then we can have private list tree node children equals new array list. And I may go back and make this so it only creates it if we need to, because every item will get a tree node otherwise. And so the parent, we get an object, we update the object, and then parent dot children dot add object. Okay, let's just make sure that compiles. All right, and then what I'm going to do initially is set it up so that on disable will dump Oh, as we go through, we'll dump them as we stop them. Manager dot root node. I get used to writing unit tests at work, and the unit tests don't typically have loggers set up for them. And actually, like, I always add a logger to all of my classes, whether I use them or not. But at work, there's like the check style or something that makes sure you use everything, and so you can't add these static fields without it complaining that you haven't used it, kind of thing, or you got to get a warning or something. And so we're encouraged not to add them unless we use them. And so I get used to when I'm just hacking a unit test just to try something, I get used to using the system out print line. Manager, just to separate those things a little bit so we'll see them better, and then we'll make a dump method. And so we'll do this string indent. I've done these kind of descent things before. And so we'll system out. Oh, again, I did it. See? Log info indent plus node get or node entity ID, entity ID, and then for tree node child node children, and we dump indent plus, let's do 2 spaces child. All right. So now when we run it, it'll build the hierarchy, and we haven't handled slots yet. That'll be something else. But so now when we exit out, it should dump those little trees. Yeah. Oh no. Oh no. I did something wrong. So we are adding it to the wrong thing. That's always the danger, ain't it? Looks pretty. Okay, so entity ID 3 got added to 3. So that's what I'm saying is we ended up adding it to itself. I think for the chest. Yeah, for the chest. So I mean I'm correct with this. Example 1, but for chests it's different. Example 2, backpack. Yeah, I already said what it is right here. Chest with items. Chest container equals the chest, and the root equals the chest, because we needed something to put it on the map. I don't think. Let me see. I had one chest that I could open in the game to test with. Yeah, test chest. But it wouldn't have. Yeah, it's its own root. It may not need a contained in. Yeah. So actually it's this root containers don't need to be contained in anything. They are their root. And so they don't need this, because we add the container root. They don't need the contained in. So a chest does not need this if it's just in the root. It only needs it if it's in something else. And so that should fix the problem, but I need to add in code to check for that to avoid infinite loops, basically. So I'll temporarily put that back after this. so I could test the problem. So, Romcram, are you trying to quit cola for health reasons, or just um, like, are you trying to like? I'm missing a root. You know, for diet reasons, like, or health reasons. I was just curious, trying to make conversation. So yeah, we're not getting the chest at all anymore. I am adding things to the chest, like its sections. Am I? Yeah, right here. So we watch the root. We should be seeing these things show up. I'm just going to leave the water open so I don't have to keep taking the cap off. So for temporarily, I'm going to put this back so that I can add some code in to make sure I don't, so we catch those bugs. So if the parent, if objects equals parent and root ID, or parent and ID, log error cycle detected E, return yeah, there's no good thing there. So let's see what happens. Okay, so we see black screen. Should add a bunch of stuff. Oh yeah, the similar shape index needs to be squelched. Uh-oh. No. So add node. Add node 3 to 3. So why? But we never saw cycle detected. So this code is not doing what it's supposed to do. Oh, because parent's a tree node. I'm an idiot. This needs to be get ID. Or just ID. Yeah. Because now we'll detect the cycle. Oops. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that's why it never hurts to have these little debug routines, especially when they're quick to write. Because you will need them, and they will be helpful. Okay, so we got Yeah, entity ID 3 has nothing in it. No. And that would have been why we never saw, when I took this out, that's why we never saw anything, is because nothing's getting added, even though these sections should be contained in chest ID, section ID. Let me log chest ID, and similarly section ID. That's fine. And then somewhere later on, I'm adding things to there. Target section, item ID, into section, target section ID. Alright, so let's just run it real quick. Somebody's failing to find their parent. Ooh. Oh. You're not supposed to cycle detect there. Oh. Oh. No. Somebody is confused. Oh, well, this shouldn't be player ID for one thing. This is chest ID. That's part of the problem. Make sure the sections are correct because we weren't seeing those show up either. Chest ID, section ID. Alright, let's try this again. I hope you guys can kind of see what I'm looking at here. So, yeah, I gotta get rid of that logging. Bunch of script out, but yes, so cycle detected, entity 10 is going into container ID 3, container 10. Oh. The sections are contained in the chest. That's their brute ID. And they're contained in the chest. Their root and their parent is the same. They're not. So I was using the section ID as the container, but they are not their container. So I did have a cycle. I did have a ton of cycles, and that's what was causing some of the issues before as well. And this should fix the hierarchy. And I can start adding the entity container to annotate the hierarchy. Okay, so yeah, no more errors. And then when I exit, we should actually get 2 hierarchies now. Yeah, check it out. Okay, so this is the player, and the player's backpack, or the player's, yeah, everybody's in the pouch. Oh, no, there are no items in the pouch, that's right. So one of these is a pouch. I need to put some items in the pouch. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So we've got the player, his backpack, all the items in the backpack, one of which is a pouch. And then here we've got the chest, all of its sections, and then the things in the sections, which are like an axe, a sword, a sword, a sword, a sword, a sword. So yeah, so the next thing would be to like add the names and annotate these with their types. So we always know their types. But first I'm going to fix the UI to have some items in the pouch so that we can see the deeper hierarchy. And we can make sure that those things get transferred. Oh yeah, because that's a backend problem. Like entity-wise, if this bag has children, every one of those contained in components says what the root container is. In this case, it's the player. And so when I drag it over to the chest, that needs to lead from player to here. And the reason I have that root idea is because eventually you may have cursed items, and no matter where they are in your hierarchy or on your person, you will not be able to remove those cursed items. So I need to know where the root is, what the root is, so that it makes the scripting easier and things like that. Also, I can tell whether you're moving something around within your hierarchy or you're transferring it fully out without a whole lot of work. Whereas right now it's kind of a mess. Anyway, so when we open this up, there's nothing in there. We want to make sure there is something in there. And so we will add, maybe we'll put two of those little, maybe we'll put those little test wands in there. Or one apple, and yeah, so let's just put an apple and a test one. Let's just cut and paste this loop. Let's put two apples in there, and they will just be in the upper right corner. And we're going to stick them in the pouch. Is the pouch ID available? It's not. So let's do def pouch ID equals null. And then where do I create the pouch? Oh, it's the bag. Yeah, equals bag ID. Okay. Pouch, bag, same thing. So these are where I was creating the apples. I only put two in there. In the pouch. Oh yeah, the pouch. So that's gonna fail. Because I need the pouch too. And so okay, so let's see if that works. Did I end up with two apples? No. Did something fail? It got through the script okay though. Oh no, it didn't. It actually didn't because there's nothing in the chest, so it failed. Let's try again. So it didn't like something. There it is. I scrolled past it before. Okay. Oh. Yeah. No signature item add. Oh, it's the container I want to grab, not the item. Pouch equals bag container. There we go. So did the chest end up with stuff in it? It did. So everything fixed, and it should... Where'd they go then? They had to have gotten added somewhere. So we're adding 2 apples to the player's pouch. And we're adding that to the player's pouch. To 0, 0. Let me see if the game thinks there's something in there. It's letting me add it there, so it doesn't think there's anything in that spot. Oh. Yeah, it did, but it made a stack. Oh, interesting. Oh yeah, it's very confused. Oh yeah, super confused. Okay, so but that could be something else that's broken, but there is... Yeah, so see now it thinks there's 3 items in there. So it is in there, it's just not rendering. So when we do this, it should come up with in the pouch. Yeah. So there are 2 apples in there, but it's not clear where the bug is, whether it's in the view code. I will debug that on my own. I'm not going to dive into that right now. We wanted to make sure the hierarchy was correct, and I was hoping to see it in the pouch, but the hierarchy is correct because we see those are apples. You can't tell, but they're apples. So at some point, when they're stacked together, I'm not going to worry about stacks at the moment, because stacks are a whole other thing because they don't have their own type in the sense that well, I mean, they kind of do. Okay. So, what do we want to do? We want to start making... So this is abstract. And so we want to start making the real classes. Container node extends tree node. Oops. Section node extends tree node. And they're all going to need a constructor like container node. Ah, why can't I type capital N's? And the ID. Super entity ID. We want something similar for here. And while we're at it, here's another trick sometimes I do. Whereas I do like this, I'll change this to item. Place all rope. And then boink, there. So let's make a toString. Return get class get simple name entity ID. Oop. And so then we will always know the type And so we can switch type. Case contained in type, type item. Case contained, type section. Container. I'm going somewhere, hold on. We'll make the default item. So we'll say result equals new item node ID and section node and container node. Alright, so that should cover all of that. We'll need to change everywhere we call get tree node. And we haven't handled the root node case. I will make, so root node might also be a container. Let's just assume it is. So we'll treat root node as a container node. I think this is a mistake because you can have containers, you can have root nodes that aren't really, like the player is not a container. You would never make a UI for it. But you still need a root. So I think we're going to need a special root node, which is a bit small. The pouch? Sorry, I didn't notice that before. Oh, wait. Oh. That's going to be an issue. Parent is always going to be a container, so I think that's safe to go like this. But yeah, the pouch is supposed to be small. It's a belt pouch, and the insides of it are determined by an algorithm that figures out how much space there actually is in that belt pouch. Let me make sure all my get tree nodes have been converted. This is going to be tricky because a container, I'm wondering if I even bother to have, I need the different nodes because I need to manage different types of objects. Section versus container. And a root is going to need its own thing unless it's also a container. Alright, let's see what I broke. Actually, I don't want to run the whole thing, just want to compile. Okay, because I wanted to change the dump. Instead of this, it's just going to dump the node. Yeah. Alright, so we should see a little bit more excitement in our little tree. Sorry I missed your question earlier, Lando. And it was temporarily focused. Alright, this may be right about where we, let me see what the hierarchy looks like. Okay. So we've got a container node, which is the player, which is really a root node. And so making that distinction is going to be important. But that one will never have a model, so maybe that's how I decide. And then you have a container node, which is the backpack, and container node, which is the pouch, and the pouch has two objects under it, and the backpack has all these objects under it. And then you've got a chest, which has got section, container. Oh, that's a problem too. So when we ask for the parent, we don't know if it's a container or not, or a section. And so we still have to be able to upgrade. I'm trying to think, the order this happens is we must see the item node get added. We must see the item node get added before. So let's see. Add node, let's just think of the last one. Add node 30. Because it should be the last one here. Add node 30. Oh, what happened to 31? 31 is missing. Oh no, it's right there. That's interesting. Oh yeah, because they go backwards. 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. Okay, that's fine. So we added node 31. The root is 3, which is the chest. And then it gets added to 11, which is the section. And 11 should have already been added before. I mean, I may have accidentally found a bug that normally wouldn't happen. So add node 11. Oh, that's 1. Add node 1, 2, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Add node 3. Cycle detected. Oh, well, let me take the cycle out, because it could be confusing things too. Right, where we had the chest, and I put the cycle back in to test something. So let's just make sure that's not screwing me up. But UI-wise, that belt pouch is for like small items you would carry easily accessible. So maybe that ends up being your tool hotbar or something. Okay, so still no joy there. But that means so 31 gets added to section 11, but we added 11 already. We added section 11, which then should have created the section node. I need to log when I'm creating new ones, because it could be that this logic is messed up. Oh, well, result equals upload. That's fine. Creating node for ID type. Alright, so let's run again. It may be that gosh, just the management of a section is going to be different than the management of a full container. I think. Creating node for entity, so that's a type 2. Oh. Add node 11 into container 3. So we're creating of type 2. What is type 2? Type 2 is a section. Okay, so we're good. So we should have created a section. And alright, I need to more logging. Never heard of more logging. Log info creating item node. So let's see what's happening. I mean, this is going to potentially happen anyway because things come in any order, and so that's going to be a problem, but I'm also trying to figure out why the current logic is allowing it to happen, because it shouldn't happen with the current logic, the current order of things. So, like, I don't have to kill it yet. Add node 31 to 11. We must have created 11 earlier. No, because we saw it get created right here. Creating node for 11. Type 2, creating section node. Updating section node. So then why is 11 not a section? Oh, it is. Okay, so I'm looking at the wrong thing. So this seems to randomly work, which is further evidence that this is sort of a general problem. So 10 is what we need to be looking at. So where do I add object 32? Yeah, so see, right. So we added object 32. We hadn't loaded 10 yet, so we create a container for 10 because we don't know what type we don't know what type its parent is. Yeah, so I'm never going to be able to get away from upgrading nodes. This type field might be useful, but it's not as useful as I wanted it to be. I think so each of these will need, I actually think what needs to happen is that things we don't know what their type is yet need to be sections as the most generic type of container. And then if we get a real object that comes in for that, we need to force it to upgrade. And if we already had one, it would return that one. And so, let me think. So the pouch comes in, for example, or something gets added to the pouch first, it comes in, thinks it's added to a section, that's fine. Then later the pouch itself comes in. It is in something else, so it identifies itself. Okay, the problem here is that there is no chest. So if I run this code like this, then the chest is always going to be a section of sections. And that ain't right neither. So if we do this, yeah, so the chest ends up being a section because it's its own root. And in a sense, that may be a problem as well. But everything else is right now. Yeah, see, the containers got it. But so, the problem is, like, if one of those apples had come in first, it's going to create a section for that pouch, and that never gets upgraded to container. So I really need to stop and think about how this hierarchy is being managed. But basically, we've got the hierarchy there, and I'm just futzing over how it's, typed, because managing a section is different than managing a container. And when you add a new section to a container, it needs to update the list of the sections in that container. When you add an item to a section, it's more straightforward. It's actually, adding an item to a section is essentially the same as adding an item to a container. That's fine. So there's a polymorphism in the type hierarchy. A section can act like a container can act like a section, as long as items are being added. But the relationship between a container and section are special, and so this type hierarchy needs to know that, which means this needs to be a container, these need to be sections, this needs to be container, this needs to be container, and so on. So the player ended up as a section here, and that's not really going to fly. I mean, that's probably fine, but I need to think about this, and it could be I add dummy nodes. It could be that I make it so that all containers have a, I don't know. I have to think about it. But I think that's where I'm going to end it, because I need to step away and think about it for a moment or two without talking about it at the same time. But hopefully, I plan to get the inventory stuff wrapped up this weekend. I think I've said that every weekend, but I am really close now. We're in like the final weird management stuff. I'm not going to be distracted by detail views and things. Kind of eye on the prize at this point. But that's where I'm going to go ahead and stop it. The three of you who've stuck around the whole time, thank you very much. If you think of, yeah, it's the final debugging that takes forever. It's always that. So if you think of new ideas for something that I might be able to squeeze into the Halloween release, I like the idea of bats. I don't know if I'll be able to do it, but I'm going to maybe get crows in. I have a surprise, I think, that I think I can do quickly, and it sort of falls in line with another suggestion somebody had of reusing existing models as mobs eventually. So we'll see. But other than that, I hope you all have a productive week. Like, comment, subscribe, and yeah, especially comment on the video if you think of ideas for a Halloween release, or things just to do at the Halloween party if you guys plan to make it in Blocktober. Or if you think of something we could do or should do for Blocktober. Maybe people can post like cool items they make in the game or something. I don't know. Other than that, I will see you guys next time. Thanks for joining.